Good afternoon. This is Julia Widup with Talk Story TV, and I have with me today Paul Komarek, who has written a book called Defying Mental Illness, Finding Recovery with Community Resources and Family Support. And we are very interested to hear what you have to say on that subject, Paul.
Well, thanks. I appreciate the invitation to chat with you today.
Thanks for being here.
Before we got started, you said for me to just swing into my talk about what the book is about. Mm-hmm. So here it is. I wrote the book originally back in 2004. It is a project for NAMI, Ohio. They felt that their membership needed a way to access resources and needed to have just the whole pathway through the process of coping with, your own illness or a problem that a family member had, and to sort of map out the way for people to make their way forward in the world. So we originally put it out in a booklet form, and NAMI Ohio printed 1,000 of them, but they couldn't keep it in print. And people, even though people said it was like the best thing ever that the organization had put out. So over the years, I've been working on ways to make the information in it and the concept of it more accessible to people. Along the way, I got permission back from the organization to take on the project as one of my own, and revised it first in 2009 for a local NAMI chapter, and then finally got it printed because of the advances in technology and the capacity we have to do print on demand and ebooks in 2011. And just revised it for 2013. So because it's a resource guide, it needs to stay up to date, and so I'm doing an annual update. And this first time through it gave me a chance to respond to my readers and include material that they asked for that we didn't include the first time through.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The book I was surprised at the power of this thing when I started working on it seriously last year. I invited a co-worker, Andrea Schroer, to help me as a co-author for the book. And she said, you think that you're writing a catalog, but really you're delivering hope. And that was key and significant to me. So I invested even more time trying to make the structure of the book create a pathway and a journey for people. And I realized as I was doing this latest revision that the book is not really about diagnosis. It's not really about treatment, even though it includes all this information about diagnosis and treatment. What it really has is a strategy for figuring it out and making your path forward. Because everybody's experience of this is different. If you have depression, you have one set of things going on. If you have schizophrenia, there's another set of things going on. And as long as you understand that you need a strategy that works, then you've got a way to move forward. So I've developed some very simple tools to kind of take the uncertainty out of all of this process. So we started with a basic strategy. Figure out what you're dealing with. Find some allies to work with you. Find some resources that you can put to work in the process. Plan both long-term and short-term, so that you're not only looking at what you're facing today, but you're doing something for the future as well. And then following your plan. So it's really kind of a simple layout. As I was going through my own recovery, I came across all these books that had the plan for, sorting through things. And I just couldn't keep up with the amount of paperwork involved in following some of these recovery plans. When my kid had problems at school, we would visit the psychiatrist or psychologist's office, and everyone would tell me to keep track of everything. They'd give me, sheets to put on the refrigerator and boxes of little stars, and I could never keep up with that. And I'm an educated person. I have a law degree. I was second in my class. My wife is a person with a college degree and was studying healthcare management at the time. And we're just not paperwork types. I was a bureaucrat. I know what it's like to present someone with more tasks than they need to have. So I focused on simple strategies. So if you can organize yourself a little bit, just a little bit, to say, let's learn about this thing we have and what's available for treatment, right? Or let's learn about housing and what's available for it, and just deliver a little bit of facts about housing, and find somebody to help me with it, and find how I can get a hold of the money to go there, and actually do a couple of things. It keeps you going. It at least gets you to the point where you're not just stuck. You can have a path forward. And the part about planning, I went a little further, because I've worked with a lot of social service agencies that have had to work with tough kinds of populations who face real challenges. And the key to me has always been that you can't do anything with your weakness. So if you're a kid in school and you don't know how to figure out a problem, you can't do anything with the part you don't know. You can only work from the skills that you have. You have to constantly build up, and you have to constantly motivate kids with the things that they have as their strengths. So the strategy I came up with is pretty simple too. It's just 4 questions. What is it that helps you make the most of your talent or gifts, right? So, there are things that just make it better. It could be, getting enough sleep. It could be, hanging out with a particular friend. It could be, whatever it is for you. It could be taking your medicine. It could be, working in your diary. But that's the thing that helps you make the most of your talents. The next question is, what helps you reduce the areas where you are vulnerable? So, if you know that you have diabetes, you take your insulin. If you know that you have, if you're subject to, some trigger that makes you feel defeated in the world, well then, you have to figure out a way to deal with the fact that you have that going on. And do the practice or whatever it is that makes you a little bit stronger. The third question is, what helps you better able to deal with stress? Because stress is the thing that knocks you off your feet. So that may mean doing some exercise. That may mean, meditation. That may mean finding a place to go to hang out when you know that you need to be in sort of recovery mode. But it's personal to everyone, and everyone has their own way of adjusting to these things. Mm-hmm. And the final question for me is, how do you deal with the risk of something going wrong? Because every one of us who's had to have recovery from some difficult condition has something that goes on with their life that's just, risky and terrible. It may be, for people with bipolar mania kinds of things, it might be, overspending. Or it might be for people with schizophrenia, getting to the point where you're just not healthy and you're too isolated and you just can't live safely. So you have to attend to the real risks that you have. You can't pretend that just because you're feeling better that you are really better. You have to really deal with risk. So my basic 4-step plan is to focus on your strengths, but pay attention to the things that keep you strong and reduce the areas where you end up getting into trouble, because the stress thing gets you into trouble. And if you ignore your risks, then you're not safe. And we want to go for safety all the time. And that's what was in the first version of the book. The book includes all the stuff about about mental health symptoms. So in about 2 pages, it just lists symptoms that people encounter. And since I'm not a clinician, I'm not going to require that anybody diagnose themselves. It's just that my approach is that symptoms pile up, and that if you have enough of them, you need to take account of that and see somebody who can really help you sort through what it is that you have. And then if you do have a diagnosis to deal with, well, then you can learn about what that diagnosis is in general terms. Because if you spend too much time learning about your diagnosis, you never spend time rebuilding your life.
You never get around to living.
I know a lot of people who are really focused on this concept of recovery. And, it's a great concept. It says that you can do better. But if you spend your whole time looking back at the thing that you've been through, right, and focusing on the illness that you have, then you're like a person who climbed out of a hole, and all you do is turn around and look back at the hole. The important thing for me is that somebody turn the other way and walk out of the hole. Walk away from it and have your life. That's the meaning of recovery for me. I think people can get beyond recovery and get to the point where they can have their lives. These days, it's not like the past, where in order to be labeled with one of these diagnoses, you had to be somebody with a terrific burden of disabling symptoms. A lot more, if we're coming to realize that mental illness is very common, we have to also confront the notion that it's commonly recoverable. People get better from this all the time, and they rebuild their lives. And even the people who have the toughest aspects of their lives to face have reconciled with their families. They have an ability to contribute to the community in some way. And unless you're focused on strengths instead of your illness, you're never going to be able to communicate effectively. You're never going to walk away from the hole and have your life. That's the premise of my book. When I revised the book in 2013, or for 2013, I revised the structure of the book so that it was actually following this path that I described. So it's more, it lets you tell your own personal story a little better. And that's my premise. So I think that the current version helps people that way. And I have figured out a further goal. After publishing the book the first time, people said that not only was it the simplest thing that they've seen, but they wanted a way to build the book into the work that they were doing in their church or in their community group or whatever. But they said they had no way to even convene a group because of the stigma that's out there. It's as though we have taken the world and said only experts have a way to cope with these problems. There's nothing left for your friend or your clergy person or the person in church. Our brains are so complicated and complex. They are not understandable, and you can't even have a chat, which is, of course, wrong. Because all through history and in every culture, people help each other with mental health issues all the time. And they do it on the basis of their relationships. They do it on the basis of their shared culture. And by saying that only experts have a stake in this, we've disabled ourselves. We have shot ourselves in the foot so that the common capacity of ordinary people to relate to each other is like gone. And we don't even have a way to talk with each other. So we focused on creating a little script for people. Just like the recovery questions are just 4 questions, the script is just 4 questions. The first question is, what have you accomplished since the last time we met? What this does is it lets it start out positive and starts you thinking in a positive way. The second question is, what are you facing? So a person that you're talking to can say what it is that they're concerned about. And just like the book where we're talking about recovery not really being about the disease, what you're facing is really about how you define what you're facing, right? It could be the bad work situation. It could be the situation at home. It could be your mood. It could be, the annoying thing your cousin did. None of that really matters. You just need the person to have a chance to say something and know that they're heard, because that business of being lonely and isolated and unheard is such a disabling feature of so many of these illnesses. And then my third question is, who are your allies? So that you can test right away and see if the person is out there isolated, because isolation is really bad for folks with these conditions. It's a common factor in suicide prevention, just to make sure that you have somebody with you. It's a common symptom that people, drive themselves to these isolating places where they can't think of anything. And the final question is, what's your plan? So what are you going to do about it? What do you think you're going to do about it? And it doesn't really matter what the person says, but at the end of those 4 questions, you should know whether you should be worrying about the person you're talking with, or you can be in some vague and general way positive, which is really the other thing that you can do. So that's the concept, right? The concept is just to give a non-clinical kind of non-stigmatizing kind of basic chat for people, and enough information to people who are chatting, right, to know when you should be worried, right? So if the person's becoming isolated, has no way of generating an option, is just really down or whatever, and you have enough information personally, right, to know a little bit about suicide prevention, to know what that question is that you ask in order to help the person out, right, then you can take a little action. But it's not complicated. A whole theme of this book is that you need not make it as complicated as the dialogue is out there in the world, because everyone has all of this advice, and none of it matters. The important thing is to just get a hold of it, because you're going to follow the advice you get. I tell people that if you have get a doctor find a doctor that you're compatible with, work with the doctor, take charge of your health, and keep them informed of the problems that you encounter. If it's time to get off medicine, have the doctor help you get off medicine. If it's time to switch medicine, have the doctor help you switch medicine. It's not about you wandering away from a process of recovery or being irresponsible. It's about, and I'm not offering a cookbook of things that give you an excuse to leave your real recovery path. It's an opportunity to take the best of what works for you and figure that out and have a way to move forward with your life. So that's my book. It's the positive book. I wanted to do for people in mental health recovery what the big book does for people in AA. It lets you have your recovery path. It lets you hold a meeting if you want to hold a meeting. It doesn't require you to report in to some giant charity. It costs, 10 or 20 bucks if you buy an ebook or, whatever. You only have to remember 4 questions. If you're going to, if you want to get into planning, there's a section in planning, but, and that gets you a really complicated plan, but, it starts with business planning techniques, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, right? Stuff that business people do every day. And then a little bit of visioning. And it's about doing something that works today plus something that will help you down the line. It's not that complicated. And that's really the key message. The key message is, there's a lot of stuff you can learn about mental illness, but it's not that complicated. You got to get a hold of it, and you got to move forward. And having some simple tools to do that is really key.
And
so
Paul, what did you write about for your guest blog with us at tvbackstory.com?
Well, I'm going to send up a blog that talks about the project I have involving redesigning mental illness, because all of the experience of mental illness is just so bad in America, right? If you get it and you get taken to the hospital, you'll be kicked out of the hospital. If you do something bad, you get hauled into a justice system that doesn't know what to do with you. If you go home and tell somebody that you're feeling depressed, the entire society's given up on you, and your society has disabled itself from its capacity to help you. So I'm talking about the things that I've covered so far in my blog, which have to do with people who run jails, who don't accept people with mental illness anymore, people who do things that really challenge the presumptions that are facing people with mental illness in our society. That's what the blog post is going to be.
Okay.
You'll see it
right.
in a couple days.
So I would encourage anyone watching this show to go read Paul's blog at tvbackstory.com. And where can we buy your book?
It's at Amazon. So if you just look at my name, type that in the Amazon search box, you can find it. My own website is churchbasement.net. And that has a collection of reviews and links to my blog. My own blog is Redesigning Mental Illness. It's on Blogspot. So, and I try to be different, because I'm not interested in your blood levels or, your blood, really. It's about the whole other experience of it.
Right.
Most of my work is based on one of my favorite authors is Peter Block, who writes about challenging the notion that it's expertise and big systems that have the answer. Most answers are in the general world that you live. I'm definitely of the opinion that it's not the hour that you spend with your therapist. It's what you do with the other 23 hours of that day and the next 6 days before your next appointment that really counts.
Yeah.
And your therapist can help you get through that period of time. But why not work on it directly, too?
All right. Thank you. This has been a fascinating interview, and I look forward to reading your blog.
All right. Well, thank you, Julia.